Vietnamese American Arizona Television.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to VAATV.com, to the real estate world, and especially to the beginner who wants to do investment and earn some profit. There are so many situations out there, and knowledge is the power. That is the reason why we have Scott Bartlowe from SF Fuller Real Estate Investment come to the studio to provide all the information needed to start the investment from small to large. So the topic today, first I have to say hello to you. I forgot. So how's everything? How's your day?
It's been a busy day, that's for sure.
But the weather's not as good.
Well, it'd be nice if it was cooler.
Yeah, it was cooler last year.
Yes,
at this time,
it's still
right?
warm in Arizona.
So we're still waiting and hoping that the weather a little bit cooler.
Yes.
So we got the people asking us, besides the investment of the real estate, the purchase, the transactions, and everything like that, there's something that people would like to know, which is like real estate. What is the law, regarding to
Sure.
the real estate? Like example, people come into the house to show the house to the customer, or sometimes like they come in and look at the house by themselves, and something happened and they get blamed on, and then maybe you can explain
Yes.
and you can give some scenario for
Yes.
people. Yeah.
Just about any time that you move into a property, you want to make sure that you have a move-in checklist, and you provide that back to the landlord. That move-in checklist actually serves to protect you, because if you move into a property and there's water leaks, or you notice that there's damage to a wall, or a door isn't working properly, you want to document that. And you can immediately turn around and you can ask the landlord to take care of those repairs. Now, sometimes they supply a regular paper move-in checklist, but if you don't have one, almost everybody has one of these. Everybody's got a cell phone. I heartily encourage anybody that's going through a home to do a move-in video, so they can save it, and then when you move out, you've got something to refer to. But the biggest thing is it gives you the documentation so that you can protect yourself against accusations that you did the damage. And you can actually show that that was damage, or whatever the problem was had occurred prior to move-in.
Right. And some other situation is like, we're talking about, that was like tenant and landlord, right?
Tenant, landlord,
that's
yes.
Tenant, landlord. But I know there's something else in the way, like if people come in just to look at the house to purchase, and they have no agent with them. But like nowadays I see a lot of people list the house under there's like a cheaper a kind of commission that they pay,
Yes.
and then they allow people, anyone that want to see can call the number. If they want to see that house, then that number will provide their lock number, and then they can go straight into the house and look at the house themselves. They don't have to have an agent with them. But when there's something happen in there, what should they do so that they can avoid all the plumbing or things involved and broken down of that?
Well, once again, my suggestion is take your cell phone with you, and when you see a problem like that, or you're the only one in there, document it, and as quickly as you can, get hold of the landlord to let them know that there's a problem. And you can always use that video as a source to back up what you said. But I understand what you're saying, because I know I've seen some situations where people have listed homes with some of these less than reputable organizations, and the use of a lockbox, non-monitoring, and those types of things, it can create a situation of confusion. And quite frankly, the last person in there before you could have done something wrong.
But like there's no record, so that's why the time is very important, right?
Exactly right.
The time, the date,
Yes.
So like who come in last, what will happen before that?
And
notification is always the best. Yeah,
absolutely.
Not ignore.
Nope. And it reminds me of an incident. This one happened a number of years ago to me. I was showing a home to a client, and it was a foreclosure.
Yes.
And the agent had just a mechanical lockbox, not the standard lockbox that you use your code to enter as a realtor. And when we went into the home, there was no refrigerator and there was no stove. And it struck me as odd because when I went back and I reviewed the pictures for it, they never showed the kitchen. You know, the kitchen is, for most folks, that is the heart and soul, because folks, they cook their meals, they talk, they do all the family stuff occurs in the kitchen.
Yes.
Well, a few days after I showed the house, a Gilbert police officer called me, and he was asking me about it, and you know, flat out asked me if I knew what happened to the refrigerator and the stove, and I said no, and I said in my recollection there was none. And it was kind of a case of where I got to thinking about it after the fact, that if I had paid greater attention to what was already in the MLS listing sheet, I would have known ahead of time whether the stove was there or not. But once again, I went back and I looked, and there was nothing there showing that there was a stove. And I pointed that out to the officer, as well as the fact that there were no pictures of the kitchen, which was extremely odd. So eventually he went back to the people making the accusations, and they were involved in it.
Oh, wow.
But, you know, it's a case of you really have to kind of be on guard. If you're in a situation where you're alone like that, and something seems a little out of the ordinary, you know, make sure you're taking the documentation with you, you know, the listing documentation, so you know what's supposed to be there. And of course, if you get there and it's not there, or if you feel something's amiss, pull that phone out and document things. If you don't need it, you can always delete it.
Right. So another situation that, you know, like everybody, they like the dog, the pet, that they always go somewhere, they take the dog with them, right? And then like when the dog make a mess, normally people have to clean it, you know, before. And if they don't clean it, then like let's say if they show the place, and then another person didn't know until like weeks later, you know, it's all like all the ant, everything in there. So who's going to be liable for it? The agent, or the agent will take over the...
Once again, if you're coming in after the fact and you see that should not be, you shouldn't have a situation like that if you're going to see a house on a showing. Whoever's got it
listed, have to review it, right?
Yes, they have to make sure. You want to present that home in the best possible light, and to have you know, a mess from a dog or a cat on the floor is one of those things that's going to make that home less desirable. So to me, it's an owner that would allow that. They're kind of cutting their own profitability and their showability for the home when they leave something like that. But if you see something like it, once again, use your cell phone. It's a quick, easy way to take a picture and document it. And let's face it, you can have thousands of pictures on a phone.
But like, as you know, sometimes the seller also need to pay attention to those because not every buyer gonna do that. They can just leave it, and then they that's not good.
And some sellers may not even be aware of it. They may be out of state. It may be a second home. It may be an investment property. And it really comes down to the showing agent. They may not even be aware of it. So at least by taking a picture of it, and in most cases, if that showing is run through the MLS system, there is a follow-up email that goes to that to the agent that brings their client in, and the listing agent asks typically 5 to 6 questions about the property. But there is a blank spot in that listing or in that feedback form where you can put something like that in there. You can tell them, hey, there's a dog accident here on the floor.
But like, you know, we stay here, and then we kind of know that that's the least to understand whoever owns the dog. They always got to have like a plastic bag with them. Like
absolutely.
And they have to clean up right when the dog make a a mess, you know.
Yep.
That's the typically that's everybody there, but we have to be responsible for.
You're responsible for your own pet. Yes, you
for
are.
all that. So another thing is like there's a question. The person said like they want to purchase a piece of property, and they hire the inspector, and then the inspector said, okay, this need more work on the AC, that you need the person that HECVAC qualify, you know, to inspect it. And then the person was asking that guy, the AC guy, to come and inspected it. And then later down the line, something when he inspected it, then he been blamed because the seller go against him for not for make something like broken or something like that. So how is that? I mean, like, because the transaction not going through at the time. So then that's why the AC contractor really have nowhere to turn, you know, like, okay, you call me in to do the inspector, and then now the seller go against me because the unit was broken. So
unfortunately, sometimes you'll have people who are unscrupulous, and you know, the one thing you need to remember when you hire a property inspector, they're generalists. They're following a set number of guidelines that come from the state of Arizona, and the types of things that they inspect is listed by the state, and the methodology that they use for their inspection comes from the state of Arizona. And that way, pretty much you know that all inspectors are following the same script. And just like what you said about the separate, the inspectors, typically the way that they'll do it is if the air conditioner seems to have problems, either visually they can look at it and they can tell that there's no insulation on the cooling coils, or they can tell it's packed with dirt, or they can tell that, you know, the fan's making odd noises, or even that the temperature drop, which is supposed to be a 20-degree temperature drop, that those aren't functioning correctly. So because the inspector is not an air conditioning contractor, the best that he can say is that it is not meeting guidelines and recommend evaluation by an air conditioning
specialist
contractor.
Yeah, contractor.
So the contractor can come out, and he uses that report as kind of his starting point. He's doing a little bit of an investigation himself to see why either, you know, it can be pretty easy to see if you're having problems with dirt and stuff built up on the coils.
Yes.
So that requires a cleaning. But you may have, you know, when we were talking about that 20-degree temperature drop, it may not have enough coolant in the system. So there could be a whole variety of different things.
Right.
But it's really a mistake, or it's an unscrupulous owner who wants to blame the contractor when it's already been identified by the inspector.
Right.
And so, you know, that type of seller who would go to that length is probably maybe not somebody you want to do business with.
Yeah. Like sometimes, like the people just want to raise up something and sue here, sue there, you know, like do all that. I didn't know that's going to consider a lot of wasting the time for, instead of like try to focus and make sure the property can be sold. Right?
Exactly. Yep. So, the whole idea is you want to create a win-win situation, but air conditioners, and we've talked about this in past shows, air conditioners, roofs, plumbing issues, those are the types of things that the inspector is going to call out, because those are the types of things that, you know, we all need to have air conditioning here in the state of Arizona in the summertime. No getting around it. And that is a absolute health and safety issue to not have cooling. But then, of course, when it comes to your roof leaking or plumbing, those are items that will destroy your property over time, because that drip, drip, drip creates mold. It creates rot in wood framing. It can destroy drywall, cabinets, wherever it's chronically leaking. So those types of things, you definitely want to have an inspector take a look at, and you want to make sure that if there is a problem, that either a plumber or an air conditioning specialist or a roofer is taking a look at it so that you don't have long-term
have
problems.
to solve it before or
Exactly.
everything listed. Yeah, because that's the future liability.
Absolutely.
After that. Yeah. So and then you want to share with anything like during the time that you doing the business, have you occur into any of the situation that you want to share with the audience so that they can be aware of? And,
I've had multiple cases where we've had problems with air conditioners. It's very common. The biggest thing that I can say, and I'll tell you, this is something that I do as a matter of my own policy with my own rental properties. With my tenants, when they sign a lease, I purchase air filters for my air conditioners.
Yes.
And so the rule that I give them is, when I get that check for the next month, give me a dirty air filter. So I see it and I can throw it away. The easiest way to maintain your HVAC system is simply putting an air filter in there. And I know enough air conditioning contractors, they'll tell you, you don't need to go to Home Depot or Lowe's or someplace and buy a $20 filter. The less expensive ones work just fine, because all you're trying to do is collect some of those dirt particles that are coming out of the air. And if you don't collect them, or if that filter gets too full, the system doesn't breathe properly. And then what it does is it pulls dirt into the system, packs around the cooling coils. So the more dirt you have around the cooling coils, the less effective that the air conditioner is. The other thing is, take a look at, listen for strange noises. And I talked with an air conditioning contractor earlier today, and he showed me a video of where in the crawl space where the blower motor is, there was a funny noise, and it was making a grinding noise. And when they finally got around to calling to have an air conditioning contractor, the air conditioning contractor told them that they were very fortunate, because it was grinding down to the point where it was so hot, it could have caused a fire in the attic.
Wow. So all that have to be clearly stated at the time they rented, and follow up.
Exactly right.
Yeah. If they can refuse to do that, right? I mean, if the tenant, that's the responsibility on the tenant to.
Absolutely.
To
and you can, that's one of those things where I've seen a lot of leases here recently where it's that's included in the lease, and the requirement for the tenant to contact the owner if there is a problem, if he hears those types of strange noises. Because as the owner, I'm not inside that apartment. I don't go into the apartment on a daily basis, but those folks are living there. So if they know they have a leak that's ongoing, if they know that they've got a problem with the air conditioning system or it's making strange noises, let's face it, we all know if something's working properly, it's quiet, it's working efficiently. But when you hear grinding noises, or you hear strange noises or smells, contact your landlord. It's so much less expensive to get after that system and do those repairs while it's at the early stages than let it get to the point where maybe the damage becomes. Imagine that blower motor up in the attic and you have a fire up there. That could be, eventually that could be, could burn the building down, or it could even harm some people that are living there.
Exactly.
If it occurs at night. So it's really one of those things where as a tenant, you need to have a degree of responsibility, but as the landlord, you also need to be able to, when that tenant says something is wrong, respond to it, check it out, do the diagnostics, make sure that everything is right, because it could be a real health and safety issue.
Right. Because sometimes the landlord, the tenant doesn't say anything, and then all of a sudden, when something really heavy, then that's late already, too late.
That's it. I've seen too many cases where tenants, they let it go until it's just a catastrophe. And, once again, it's just so much easier when it's handled early in the problem stages. And there's usually telltale signs, multiple telltale signs. Don't ignore it. Get it handled, get it fixed.
That's why a lot of people do an investment on the on the housing, on the residential, it's not easy to get a good tenant. You know, they're afraid of because sometimes they want to send the responsibility to the tenant to take care of certain things, or to like not picking on stuff. Like, let's say the light bulb, they can change it. You know, they don't have to like wait for the landlord to come change or something like that. So they call little single. Sometimes it's like not heavy, not we put in a way like every single little things. So that's why when the people doing investment for the real estate, they tend to avoid the residential because of those that they don't have the good luck of getting the good tenant who responsible for, who who like take the house as they have. They don't think like if they rent the house just for somebody else's property and they don't care, and that person have to be doing every single little things from very minor. I'm saying that. Yeah. Right. So
it's interesting you bring that up because finding a good tenant is a key to having a good property.
Yes.
And I'm going through that right now. I own a duplex, and I've got one apartment rented. I've got the second apartment. It is for rent. And today I selected a tenant to move in.
Yes.
But talking about the process, the first thing I do, of course, is I advertise, and I tend to keep my prices a little higher than average, in part because if somebody's having to pay more, they generally are a little more capable. I try to stay away from the low prices because if it's low, below market rent,
yes,
you're going to get
must be something.
You're going to get a tenant who knows they can't get into a good apartment.
Right.
So I start off with where I keep my rents at. The second thing is I use my phone and I take a video of what the place looks like when it's ready to rent.
Yes.
The next thing is I use an application. And I have them sign the application. I then turn around and I do a credit check on them. And I, of course, working for a brokerage, I can go to and get rental checks and everything like that, so I can see what their past rental history has been. The rental history is kind of an indication of whether or not you're going to have a problem with someone, because if they've got evictions or if they've got past due on unpaid rents, that's really not a tenant that you want to have in your apartments or in a home.
Will they show everything like that when you do a credit check? If they don't go through the eviction, let's say, how do we know if they don't have a record like that?
Well, that's another question, because here's not only do I do a credit check, but I go through and I call their employer and I talk to their employer. Not only do I don't just trust what they wrote down and what the credit check is showing as far as rent. I call the employer to verify how long they've been there, what kind of an employee they are, and how much they're making. Because you want to make sure that you're not overstressing that tenant. And the general rule of thumb is about 35 to 40% maximum of their income can be used for housing.
Oh.
So you want to be very careful that that I had one gentleman who I looked at his application and I turned and said to him, "You don't make enough money. I mean, how are you going to eat? How do you pay your car bill? How do you pay your insurance bills?"
Right.
So the price of the apartment was going to be more than he could afford, and so that was the reason I turned him down. So I pay attention so I don't put my tenants in a bad position that way. And some of them, I hate to say it, they don't have common sense enough to be able to budget on their own. So like I said, I check their employment and I also call their current landlord. And I ask them, how long have they lived there? How much are they paying? Have they had any late payments? And so that gives you a good idea on the type of person that you're getting into. And then, of course, I meet everybody that goes into my apartments. I meet them in person. I set down the rules that I'm going to adhere to. And then I always inform them, if there is a problem with the apartment, you must call me immediately. I will fix. It's far easier and far less expensive for me to fix smaller problems than let them get big. And then the last thing that has always worked for me very well is I've usually will get a home warranty on the property.
Yes.
So that, the common things that you have problems with, air conditioners, the roofs, all of those types of things can be covered. So then you can call a home warranty company. And, frankly, the home warranty company is almost like an insurance company for the building envelope. So that if you do have problems with it, you'll have a service call, typically of $75 or so. But then they can take care of any additional expenses above and beyond that.
So I know that, like all that say really making sense. Like we rather let the house empty or vacant than to rent it to someone that you cannot verify. Right?
That's correct.
Because like there's many scenarios. Let's say if they give you the phone number where somebody can verify for them, because they say they just move out and they are out of state or somewhere and they just come back. So there's many scenarios. But the good point you bring out that I agree that we have to keep the price based on the market and higher or equal to the market value, because if the person that can afford, then that person will be able to understand the situation. Exactly. Right? For that.
And touching on that whole thing about where you're placing the price. In the state of Arizona, you can retain a security deposit.
Yeah.
It can be up to 1.5 months of rent. Typically, I just do 1 month of rent. But, if that price is high enough, people don't want to walk away from $2,000.
Yes.
If that's what your security deposit is.
Right.
I have never had a problem with somebody that put down a high amount for a security deposit. On the other hand, I have seen other landlords, when I've gone to sell their properties, and they've been in situations where the tenants are lousy, they've missed rent, they're trying to get caught up, and now they're giving partial payments on rent, and you go, well, how much is your security deposit? Oh, $200, or no security deposit at all. So you got nothing to help give that tenant an incentive to take care of your interests and his interests.
And then sometimes about the home warranty too, some tenant give a trouble to the landlord, like because sometimes take like 24 hour, 48 hour for the service guy to come over.
Right.
And they say no, they want immediately, like 24 hour, and sometimes they take longer. They don't agree to it. So that's another issue of the things that we have to negotiate with the tenant. Yeah, in regard to that. But the bottom line is, as if the person that really working hard and afford to pay for the price like that, they will maintain the property.
Yes.
They don't drop the property. Oh, and also about the pet rule. The pet is like some I see like they have a non-deposit for the pet. Why is that?
Well, you've got a couple of different things, because I know dogs in particular have become kind of an issue. Some people refer to them as service animals, emotional support animals, those types of things. And then you've got pets. So a lot of landlords, and myself included, I have a no pet policy on my apartment.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And you can exclude a pet. And if that person is truly a person that has a service animal, they're going to have a letter from a healthcare professional, and it will give a basic statement in there saying that you have some type of a health condition which is remedied or aided by having a service animal. Now, when you're filling out the application as a tenant in that type of situation, and they have a no pet policy, you're not excluded. Federal law will protect you. But you need to provide that service animal letter from a healthcare professional. Then in those cases, the landlord cannot exclude you. I have talked to some landlords who over time have said, oh, I'd never allow that, even under those circumstances. Well, unfortunately for them, federal law prevails, and they must. But
because that the service dog's really helping them, just like an individual, right? They don't
That's right.
consider as a regular dog.
well,
That's,
you as a landlord, would you deny a tenant medication? Would you deny them a walker if they need that? You know,
Yeah.
you can't do that.
right. No, because I was thinking the reason why there's no pet, because if a regular dogs, then they no train and they just choose on stuff and
Exactly.
destroy the house. But if like a service dog says, maybe there's some different issue there, right?
Yeah.
It's considerate and
Yep.
it can be considered.
Exactly
Yeah.
right.
Like that.
And
Yeah.
generally speaking, those types of dogs are more mature, and they're an assistance to the people that are living there. They have a medical or
So they
emotional.
understand, they don't destroy, they don't play around.
Exactly right.
They've been trained. So that's a different things. Yeah.
Exactly right.
But like you say, like now I know, like with Arizona law, with the landlord, they okay to set the no pet
Exactly right.
policy.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not like discriminate or anything.
Nope.
Animal
Because
discrimination.
a pet is something that you bought just for your family to enjoy. But on the other hand, a service animal is an animal that is helping you or helping a
daily-
member of your family. And it could be a whole variety of different types of medical conditions or emotional conditions. But, once again, it does require a letter from a healthcare professional.
So like when the contract and everything say no pet, but they hide the pet. The tenant hide the pet, then, which means what a landlord gonna do?
Well, you can evict them almost immediately because if you think about it, you've got to. They've told you that there's no pet,
Yes.
and yet they have one. So what have they done?
Yeah,
They've lied.
Yeah, they
They've
lied.
lied.
Yeah, they lied.
They got under their,
On the contract, they say
So as soon as you start making false statements on the contract, you've voided the contract.
Yeah, like again, so we're gonna go back to the things that the people like they can afford with the high rents, or like the market rent. Then they understand the rule, the policy, and they follow through. Because I see like if something happened like that, then always a fight, like between the tenant and the landlord. It's just like just a mess. That's why the landlords sometimes they get so afraid of.
Well, and I'll tell you something else. If you're a landlord and you think that you've got a tenant who is not adhering to the terms of the lease,
Of the lease, yeah.
under the Arizona landlord.
Yes.
We've talked about this before.
Yes.
Every landlord should have a copy of this.
Yes.
And you can get it from the Arizona Department of Housing.
Yes.
But one of the things you can do as a landlord is you can give them a 48-hour notice to come in and do an inspection. And when it's an inspection, you can go into the closets, you can go into every bedroom, you can go into the bathroom, you can open up the sinks, you can open up the air conditioner, see if the filters change. There is nothing when you're doing that inspection that is off limits from you taking a look at. And so that, I know I've been in rental housing
That's a good
in years
idea.
gone by,
Yeah, we don't think like
and my landlord came in and did inspections.
That's a good idea. Yeah, like because so then you kind of afraid of investment in those, because if you can follow through, you have all the right to do something and prevent from things happening, right?
You still have the rights. Yep.
Yeah, it's just like come in and if you don't like something, you give them notice. They move, right? They gotta move.
If they've broken the terms of the contract, or the lease is a contract. Is
the lease.
essentially.
Yeah.
So if they've broken the terms of the contract, they're in breach of contract. You can get them out of there.
Okay. So let's say if they sign the lease for certain terms like that, and then when the term over, but they don't want to move, what can the landlord do? Because let's say if there's a trouble tenant, let's say then they only have certain contract like until 6 months. Okay, the landlord say, okay, wait until 6 months. Then after like the month come, they still don't want to move.
Well, in your original, if you have a well-written lease, you'll have a provision in there that talks about what occurs near the end of the lease term.
Okay,
so I know most folks typically have 30 days, but I'm seeing 60 days become more and more common. Right. So what happens is the landlord sends that that tenant a notice
Yeah.
and says, we have 60 days. It's my intention for you either to sign a brand new lease, and that gives you a perfect opportunity to raise the rent,
Yes.
incidentally, and extend the term,
Uh-huh.
or you either sign the lease or you move out. And it also tells in there that, you know, as you get closer to the end of the lease, you have the right to be able to bring in other prospective tenants to walk through the apartment or the home.
So how about like what is the law for the Arizona in regard to they claim that they older people and they have more we're talking about more right to not doing certain things.
Well, nobody has the right to break the terms of the lease. Age has nothing to do with that. There's a few things in the law that do allow people that are of a certain age, but most of those are related to taxes. If you're an owner and you're below a certain income threshold, say you're living on a fixed income, maybe you've got Social Security in it, and you make just enough to pay for your mortgage. The state or the county can give you relief on taxes, so your property taxes can be lower. But as far as there's nothing that the state does or can say that they can do to give that person, even because of their age, some right that is in violation of the terms of that lease that they agreed to.
Yeah. So I mean, like of course, all this you guys can think of the management company, right? So
Yes.
so they would deal with it, and I know like the owners sometimes if they do direct, then they always have they're soft-hearted, you know, sometimes, and they make the decision based on not the business decision, like you say.
You know, you've heard me say it before. If you're gonna do investment real estate, it's a business.
It's a business. Yeah.
You know, if you want to be soft-hearted with your family, or go donate to a charity or something like that.
Yeah.
But as soon as you start cutting corners with tenants, they will take advantage of you, and they will put you in a bad position. You know, you can always. I had a rental home in Tempe for about 10 years. And over the course of that 10 years, I had 4 different sets of tenants. In Tempe, they have a city ordinance that says you can have no more than 3 people in a home who are unrelated. So in each case, when I had these folks living there, they were either grad students or recently graduated, and they were working on their first jobs. But it was 3 roommates in each case, and they were unrelated. In that 10 years, I never had a single late payment.
Wow.
I had never had a single problem.
That's very good.
But I laid the rules down ahead of time, and you know, and I told them I approached it as a business. I told them that if you treat me with respect and treat my home with respect,
yes,
I will treat you with respect.
Right.
I had one occasion where I had one young lady, she called me up and she said, "Hey, I'm going to be late with rent." And mind you, this was a young lady who was always very punctual, always very polite. And I'd seen the interior of their home and knew they kept good care of the home. And I asked her what the situation was. And she said that her mother had passed away and she was out of state for the funeral. And so, of course, that's an opportunity where you can be a little bit soft-hearted, but that's somebody who deserves because it has been a good credit, has done good all the time.
So
you can extend it in those cases. But like I said, if you treat it as a business, then it makes all the other decisions easier. And believe me, over the years, I've heard all kinds of sob stories. And some of them are just that. They're just sob stories. On the other hand, you do have some people who end up in a situation where there's a little bit of a hardship. So evaluate them case by case. But once again, treat it as a business. And if you've got somebody who has been a good tenant and they've got some type of a hard circumstance, then that's maybe where you give them that break.
Yeah. So it's like build a credit, like whatever that is. Yeah. I agree. I mean, like that's why there's many situations in regard to tenant landlord and things happening just because at the beginning it's not like clearly stating out like that, and the contract is unclear, and all the misunderstanding and everything else, and just bring to a disaster for the whole thing.
And we've talked about it before, and I've said before, get yourself a good lease. There's a number of places to get it.
Yes.
If you go to a realtor, the Arizona Realtors Association produces a good lease, and a lot of the things that we're talking about are subsections and they are covered in that lease. There's nothing that precludes you from taking a good lease and adding addendums to cover your unique situation on your property.
Right.
So that you can add those types of things.
Right.
I've seen other folks who had a 1-page or a 2-page lease, and then when they have problems, there's nothing in there to discuss how that problem gets handled.
Yeah, because like let's say they late, then automatically you have to serve their 5 days pay or quit, right? Something like that, and then move on. Because I see like somebody like waiting for a few months down the line, then the money goes so much, and you lost all those time. Nothing.
You're exactly right. And, my opinion is on occasion, some people get a little bit behind.
Yeah.
If somebody doesn't get their rent in on the exact date that it's due, and then it drags on for 5 days. Yes, you do your 5-day notice. And then when they do make a payment, make sure you charge them a late fee. But if it drags on and they go, well, can I give you half of it?
Yeah.
You can accept half of it, but that doesn't mean that they're still not late.
It's still late. Yeah, even like half, but they still have to pay like a regular late fee.
Yeah,
because
they pay the regular late fee. But every day that they go with that 50% payment, they're still late. They're still accumulating fees. Now, I've seen some of them where they go, well, can you let me pay it back over time? I just think that's a terrible idea. I have,
because they're reason over the reason, and always things happen over the things. Yeah.
But like we were talking about before about looking at what their income is.
Yes.
If it gets too much, if the amount that they owe is too much,
then they're not
qualified.
Never
going to get caught up.
Yeah, they can't.
So you need, once again, treat it as a business. It may sound cold-hearted, but you're actually doing yourself a favor. And you're protecting yourself by doing that way.
I think it's easier to let the house vacant than to face all the headache. Like if you just get anyone come in and they can pay 1 month and then that's it.
Well, that's it. And
all the further month there's no. So.
You're exactly right. You're almost better off not having anyone in there than taking anyone in there. Right. Make sure your whole success with that property is based on properly screening your tenants and a good lease from the start. And then adhering to the lease. Both the landlord and the tenant adhering to the lease.
Wow. Yeah. I think that's a great tip. I hope that we all can learn, like we got to be difficult at the beginning, like try to do everything that's possible to make it work, to make sure that the person will qualify to rent it.
Absolutely.
Because if not, then they will have to look for a lower one, right? They just have to, they have no choice. They have to go to a different area where it's not the same area they want to rent. Yeah. But that's just for another scenario for that. And then I know that there's so today we will talk about all kind of real estate law, real estate law like that. Do you want to share any scenario and to avoid beside the tenant and landlord? I know there's many about that one.
There's a variety of them, but I
know like here in Arizona, not too many, huh?
Well, yeah. And that's, like I said, the biggest thing is, I can't recommend it enough. You've got to follow the Arizona Landlord Tenant Act.
Yeah.
That's one aspect that as a landlord, you have to understand and follow those laws. The second thing is federal fair housing laws.
Yeah.
non-discriminatory laws. You need to follow those laws. And I will tell you something else. If you go ahead and you advertise publicly that you have residential property available for lease, you shouldn't be surprised that you may get shopped. And when I say shopped, it's because both the state and the federal government will have investigators who will call you and pretend to be tenants.
Oh, okay.
And they're looking for a place. And during the course of your conversation, you violate the law, you could be subject to a $10,000 fine.
For what? Like violate, like don't say the wrong things or what?
Exactly right.
You can give out the scenario.
One of the biggest ones, and it just kind of cover this real quick.
Yeah.
This comes straight from fair housing. But the first thing is, fair housing, it opposes discrimination in housing based on race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, sexual orientation, gender identity, and national origin.
Wow, yeah.
And so those areas seem to be the ones where folks get into the most trouble.
Like the question, like gotta be asked the right way, right? Yeah.
So you need to be very careful. Even now we're starting to see some changes in the way that properties are described. Some ethnic groups have a hard feeling, or they feel that use of some words is a little bit discriminatory. One of the most common ones here recently is family room, family-oriented neighborhood.
Okay.
To most of us, it seems kind of ludicrous, but on the other hand, there are certain groups that makes them feel like it's discriminatory. The use of the word master bedroom. So now it's becoming the primary bedroom. But your choice of words can put you in a position where you may, under some circumstances, be like cannot ask personal question. No, you can't.
Yeah. How old or whatever.
Well, most of that information will be captured on the lease, and that's all right. But you certainly can't ask them anything about. If you got two guys, well, you can't ask them what their relationship with each other.
Yes.
And as far as children are concerned, yes, you can limit. You can limit how many people come into your home. Generally speaking, you can allow 2 people per bedroom when you've got children.
Right.
But if you've got a 3-bedroom house and somebody's wanting to move in with 10 children, if you start doing the math, it's pretty tough to get all of those people into that home.
But like you okay to say no? You allow that because that's just like you if you let the people rent it and then they disclose for that many people there, you have a right to say no, right?
Yeah, you can actually say that it's beyond the
it's not like discrimination or anything.
It's simply a matter of the physical well-being of the people that are occupying the property, because if it's too crowded, then it's tough for them to have a good lifestyle in there. The other thing too is as a landlord, when you have a whole lot of people in a house in a small area, there's a lot of wear and tear on everything. Yes. So all the more reason, steer those folks towards bigger homes. Yeah. And there's other ways that they can get it, but definitely do not pack a house full of people.
Yeah. Like sometimes I know, like when people ask questions, they don't mean it. They don't understand. They don't mean it. And then after they got the information, they say no, then become into the Fair Housing Act. They involved into that. They don't even think about it.
Right.
So where can they get those information in regard how to ask the right question to the tenant?
Well, once again, go back to the Arizona Department of Housing. They are kind of like the bellwether. They're the first line of defense when it comes to discriminatory housing issues. They actually can start some of the cases for the federal folks, but and they do have good information on their website. You can call them and ask them questions. I mean, they're ultimately the state housing authority. They're not trying to get everybody into trouble. They're just trying to make sure that everybody's treated fairly. And if you have questions, call them it's a government agency. They're there to give you information.
Okay. I mean, like, those are very fair. So one of them about that Follow Fair Housing Act,
Yes.
law. But general, like everything gotta be in that booklet. I know that I mean, like I see the booklet you show is really thick. So whoever want to do it, they have to go back and slowly and read, because people have many things in their daily life. So sometimes they just slip. They just don't follow a little detail of every single things. Only when things happen, then they let me start looking into it and see.
I'm just pulled up the list of different topics that's covered under the Arizona Residential Tenant Act. We've already talked about security deposits. That's in there. It's talked about disclosure, that they need to supply that landlords need to supply a habitable unit. But it also gets into things like, once again, air conditioning here in the state of Arizona. You're living in an apartment and it's July in 2023, and we've got all these days over 115 degrees. How can you live in there? So, there has to be a reasonable, and that's what it really comes down to, is reasonable amount of time for the landlord to get those repairs done. Now, there's some repairs, sometimes when a tenant just goes, you know what, the landlord hasn't taken care of the repairs, I'm going to do the repairs. The Landlord-Tenant Act even specifies how that can be handled. And so that's all the more reason to know, or to have this at your fingers. I wouldn't say memorize it, but you need to have this, maybe even save it, or just go back to the Arizona Housing Department and look at it online. But
I think best is, like you mentioned, like if like maybe once a month, or one per few months, the landlord have a right to give a notice 48 hours to come and access into the apartment or into the place the tenant live, and from there can discover something wrong, something right, something is not right, then point it out, or even make a decision.
Exactly right.
Of if they can continue to stay there or not.
Because you have the right to protect your property. But at the same time, you're not only protecting your property, you're maintaining your property so that your tenant has a better living environment. Exactly right.
So like because like I didn't see, but like if there's the management company, they do that, right? If they do the inspection like that.
You can ask them to do it.
Oh, okay. Like normally they don't do, but like
some, I've seen some very good management companies where they will go ahead and do it as part of their contract.
Like before the renewal of the new lease.
Yes.
Right? So they always do that and see what's wrong, what need to be done, and things like that.
The other thing that I'm starting to see on leases as well is that a provision for repairs. And so what I'm seeing is, and this kind of keeps your repairs down a little bit lower, but if there's a problem with the home, that the tenant needs to pay for the repair if it's $75 or under. So that way it's a smaller repair.
Yeah, I see some contractors saying like if they call for a service, then they pay, and the repair will be on the landlord. So landlord take care of the repair, but like whatever they call for the service, for anything, service call, then they just pay for the service call, because that way is like eliminate a lot of little things that not necessarily, because if they see that they pay like $100 for the light bulb changing, they might as well do that light bulb changing themselves.
You bet.
Right?
Yeah,
so they don't call on. Yeah.
That's right.
So
it prevents the tenant from calling the landlord every time that there's just something minor.
It's not that anything much. So, and then another situation is like if the neighbor has a lot of pets, and those pets, like say cats, like have a lot, like if they keep like producing, like more and more and more like that. So the neighbor has a right to call the animal control.
You can't.
Or we have to call.
Once the tenant can call on a neighbor, because once it gets to the nuisance level, I mean, that becomes, once again, that's a health and safety thing.
Right.
Feral animals or
like wild animals.
Yeah.
They need to have a place for themselves. Right?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And the problem is and it seems to be in neighborhoods where there's a lot of turnover, but unfortunately people, when they move, sometimes they just turn out their pets and they don't take the pets with them. So what do the pets do? They reproduce. They start producing more and more cats or dogs in the area. Well, dogs, of course, have a tendency through their behavior sometimes to get into groups, and they can create a real hazard. Exactly.
Yeah, they can do attack. Yeah.
Cats, on the other hand, they can reproduce, and next thing you know, you've got cats all over the neighborhood, and they
can spread the illness, like anything that they get from, they can spread
diseases, all those types of things. They're not getting their vaccines, so they can lead to your pets or even you and your family, if you come in contact with them, from getting ill.
So like let's say the neighbor, like whoever, either tenant or landlord right now, if they watch the show, they can see those are very important. When they call the animal control, it's not that animal can be harmed, but they can put in the right spot, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, they've been maybe taken care or adopted or something, but at least they don't walk around and have nobody taking care, and they might gonna just jump in somebody's house and then keep producing.
Well, we always see from time to time, we see on the news somebody that has had 60, 70 animals, and unfortunately some of the animals are not cared for, and some are some need immediate care, or some are beyond saving and have to be put to sleep, and that's not the situation that you want to have with a neighbor, because if you've got healthy animals, that can lead to your animals and you coming in contact with those diseases.
Yeah, that's true. Especially the past COVID-19 things happen. Yeah. So then, but like, so they can they can look on the state phone public number, and they can find the animal control. And
most of the cities have their own animal control, or the counties always have animal control as well.
Okay. And then one more thing is like, how do we know like that area we have like a fixed amount of rental rate, and some area they can go whatever they feel the property worth to rent?
In the state of Arizona, as it sits currently, we do not have rent control.
Okay.
I know California, I know some of the other states that I've lived in have had rent control. Where you couldn't raise it above a certain percentage.
A certain amount.
Generally speaking, I'm not in favor of rent control, because what happens is you're just, the whole reason that we get into investment properties is to make money.
Exactly. Yeah, make some profit.
And if the state is arbitrarily limiting our ability to make profit, why would you want to keep renting?
That's true.
So what you end up doing is this. I understand what the state's idea was originally, is they were trying to make sure that they continue to have more affordable housing. But when you stop limiting the ability of a landlord to make profit, which was the whole reason for investing in the first place, what's their alternative? They sell the home. And oftentimes what happens? It's occupied by an owner-occupied. So now you've got less affordable rental housing.
Right, and nobody have house anymore. It's less and less for that. So yeah, I mean, like you're right. I didn't see here. That's why I thought like maybe I don't know. But it's really like in Arizona, they don't have rent control.
As of right now, they don't have rent control. There has been a state senator, I believe he's out of Tucson.
So like there's no law, nothing. Like if you raise the rent based on the market value, like before is real low, and then you raise up. That's just your own choice, right? I mean, the landlord choice. I mean, if the tenant cannot afford to stay, then they have a right to move out.
They have a right to move out. Yeah. And certainly, I mean, I see write-ups on it both in Tucson as well as in the Phoenix area, where people have, where a new landlord comes in, they fix up the property, and then they raise the rents. And then the people that were living there, it was a less desirable place at that lower rent, but now it's a much more desirable,
much better place. And
they put money into it, so they deserve to get a return on their investment.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
There is a state senator out of Tucson who, in the last 2 legislative sessions, has proposed bills for rent control. They, at this stage, it's not very popular in our state. I don't anticipate that it will be. You know, statistics say that here in the state of Arizona that we're short nearly 70,000 affordable housing units. I think that there's other ways where the state can encourage builders and landlords, but to limit their rent, I think is counterproductive. Just like what I was saying before, if you limit the person's ability to make a profit off of their money, and in many cases, that money may be how that landlord is. That income is what that landlord is living off of.
Right.
So now you're going to limit. Now you're going to limit his ability.
Yeah.
So I just think it's counterproductive.
They do something else, and then meaning like the less housing, and like a different type of investment. They might gonna just sit home and do stock or something.
Well, sometimes the stock market is up and down and volatile too.
Yeah. So it has here and there. So it just depends on how that. But I think like I see many new building or houses out there for new construction.
Yes.
So it's maybe the predictive, like more people going to move in here.
I'm glad you brought up the topic of new housing, because there's actually there are builders out there now who are building subdivisions as rent to own.
Rental
or rental only, so that the developer is going to become a landlord.
Oh,
and they're building brand new homes so that people can live in there. Now, in many of those cases, they have a business model where maybe 10 or 15 years down the road, they can turn around and they can sell that house.
Wow!
But at least initially, it is a rental property.
Oh. Wow.
And that helps, and they're smaller homes in many cases, not these real big fancy mansions with granite countertops, but they're serviceable homes. They provide a good place where people who are starting out can afford to live and get their start without breaking the bank.
Wow, that's very great to share, to know about all that. So I think we are out of time again. So
really,
it's really fast.
Yep.
I mean, time fly fast. Each time we hope to have some topic, or like if audience has any question, they raise up, and then you're going to do all the work to provide it. That's a wonderful. I mean, thank you so much for doing all that. Yep. Yeah, that's a lot of printing. I can see that colorful printing.
we were looking at some different cases, but like I said, the biggest things to pay attention to are the Arizona Landlord Tenant Act and Fair Housing Act. And if you're a landlord, if you adhere to those two, you're following those two, you're in the right line. You're in the right place.
Yeah.
If you don't, you're going to get outside them, and you're going to put yourself at risk of getting fined.
A lot of stuff going on. Yeah, people back and forth sue things and give more opportunity for whoever in the middle want to get something.
Exactly right.
So a lot of stuff. So that's a very good idea. I mean, I hope. I mean, I learned it. I hope I have to follow with that too. I mean, every one of us. Yeah. And so thank you, Scott, and thank you everyone for watching our show of the Real Estate Investment for the Beginner. And we will see you guys next week, and have a wonderful. Want to repeat, like the time will be changed to later, right? Instead of like 6, so now we start at 8 from now on. Right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Is that right? Because of your meeting?
No, this was a one-time
just
thing.
one-time thing?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So we can go back to like, okay, so regular at 6. Okay.
Yep.
So, all right. Then we'll see everyone next week. Have a wonderful weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
LinhVi xin cảm ơn sự theo dõi của tất cả quý vị trong những giây phút vừa qua. Chương trình VAATV xin kính chào, tạm biệt và xin hẹn gặp lại quý vị vào lần phát hình kỳ tới. Mọi chi tiết về thông tin thương mại và bảo trợ, xin mời quý vị hãy liên lạc về địa chỉ email vaatelevision@gmail.com và số điện thoại là 480 289 9816 480 289 9816, website vaatv.com và vaaznews.com. Xin kính chào, tạm biệt.